Hi guys, and welcome to part 2 of To Be an Ally for Equality. Today we're going to be talking about the roles and responsibilities of being an advocate for LGBTQ mental health. And today we have our guest, a new special guest, different than part 1. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, hi everybody. Hello, beautiful people. My name is Amarie. It's short for Andrea Marie. And I am a creative mental health advocate. And what that means is that, I use creativity in the form of painting and visual arts and short poem writings or quote writings and things like that. And also advocating in the community by doing a lot of community service, um, whether it's for nonprofit organizations raising funds or just, advertising their work and participating in some of their events. Or if I'm just in my local neighborhood, like volunteering and helping out and stuff. Excuse me, I'm getting something on my screen. Um, that's how I pretty much, advocate wellness for the community, because I believe everyday people can just do extraordinary things from within themselves because, we just have that natural ability to tap into. So
That is so true. And I love all the work you do. And
thank you.
I'm so excited that we can kind of be here and just kind of have an open discussion and just sort of talk about the things that I covered in the blog on February 18th, 2022. So if you guys want to have kind of a reference to maybe get some of the things we're talking about, I would definitely recommend checking that out on the website, which will be linked in the show notes. So we're going to go ahead and just dive into it, just kind of throw ourselves right in. And if you haven't listened to part 1, stop and go listen to it because I'm just going to be referencing that a lot as well. Because in part 1, we already identified what an ally is, what an ally is not, and how to identify false allyship. And now that we have clear lines that have been drawn, today what we're really discussing is the roles and responsibilities of allies. In this section, I always like to start off with introducing the acronym SAVE, which stands for Spreading Accurate and Relevant. This always happens. I can't speak words. It stands for spreading accurate and relative. Oh my god. No, put this in the outro. Put this in the outro. This is great. This is great. Oh my god. Spreading accurate and relevant information. Period. Got that right. Advocating for inclusive treatment practices, voting no on anti-LGBTQ bills, and engaging with pro-LGBTQ mental health organizations. That could be anything from a nonprofit to a school, Gay Straight Alliance, or GSA. How do you think that the acronym SAVE applies to the work that you do in your community and in your life in general?
What I do, let me see. Wow, that's a great question. So tell me again what the acronym means. Not that it means, like, say it again in my head, because
Yeah.
we had a lot of giggles, and I was trying not to.
Yeah. So SAVE is basically outlining the priorities for allies, which is spreading accurate and relevant information, advocating for inclusive treatment, voting no on anti-LGBTQ bills, and engaging with pro-LGBTQ organizations.
Okay, so I can dive right into that. What I do, well, two things. One part I can talk about is that I work with NAMI. And when I say I work with NAMI and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, those two organizations right then and there are very, 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 very key, because they do a lot of that. A lot. I mean, a lot of the promotions and a lot of the community work that we do, I'll start with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So for example, this summer, you know, I'm a volunteer. I'm not paid to work with them. I just do it. You know, a lot of our volunteers do outreach work. And so part of the community work that we did, especially in the Bronx, we went to high schools, and we were going to different high schools to have seminars called Talk Saves Lives. And in those seminars and in those workshops, we have open forums like this to have real conversations with teenagers and young adults who are from all diasporas and all walks of life, including particularly the LGBTQIA community. And we just really emphasize that working with AFSP is a safe space. We give materials, and we have open conversations that they can talk about what they've been going through, where their supports are so desperately not being, you know, given or not received, discrimination, and how it has affected them mentally, emotionally, psychologically, any of those things that may have got to a point of self-harm or may have gotten to a point of suicidal ideations. And so we just wrap our arms around them through these forums to let them know that they have safe spaces and resources that they can go to, and some points even some ways to open the conversation, because there are some that have come up. There are some conversations that have come up where an individual may want to open up and say that, you know, they may be, you know, they want to be transgender, or they're thinking about, you know, their sexual identity, and they're clear that whatever that identity is not going to go well with family or friends or what have you, and they're scared, all of these things. And so being a part of that, being able to see that, hear that, and experience that, it's just so profound for me, because they, you know, they just really go above and beyond to just say you're enough and your life matters, and you know, we need you here to be the most amazing self that you are, and be accepted for who you are, as you are, what, you know, whatever you know, whatever it is that, you know, you're going through, it does not have to end in that way. You don't have to feel like this is the only way out. The pain can stop, and, you know, or at least be easier to process and heal from, to be your best self. That's one piece. Sorry if I'm rambling, because I just get so excited. You know, the other thing, what else? The other things that I do, let me see. Wow. Sometimes it's a lot of work I do, I have to say, is revolved around schools. I used to work for the New York City Department of Education. And so a lot of times we would have these conversations in groups that would be called, let's see, youth communications groups. They have different names, youth communications, um, or student speaks, or any kind of, we have programs that have been infused in the public school system for social emotional development, that is literally a safe space where you get credit for showing up, like just show up, just come to class, you know, and participate. And in sometimes in these classes, sexual orientation issues come up, LGBTQIA issues come up, racism, gender inequality, or, you know, anything and everything that's affecting the youth today. And it's so refreshing to see and hear high school students from 13 and up talk about, yeah, I'm going through that, or what have you. And it's not, it is, the point of it is to be a non-judgment free zone. And the point of it is to support the social emotional development of the teenagers in our public school systems and in our communities, that actually will get credit, elective credit, for just being present and being participating and speaking up. And these sessions, these classes are usually in conjunction with the guidance counselor or the social worker or the dean or what have you to, guide the mental health part, because, it's not easy to talk about. And you're always going to have someone in the class that's going to say something. And that's the regulation part of having that ally that may or may not be. Most of the time, we don't ask if they are, LGBTQIA or not. It's more of a focus of this is about the student, not about me as the teacher, not about me as a social worker. You can ask, you can ask and they'll say answer. It's not like, they'll be secret and go, oh no, that's not something I want to discuss. They'll tell you, we've had some teachers who were either lesbian or gay or non-binary or pansexual or what have you. And so, if you ask them the question, they'll answer it. But that's another thing that we've done that I've seen, as a teacher's aide. I haven't been able to actually stay and be in those groups, but when I did come by, when I was able to pop in for the time that I could, it was really, really, really beautiful to see that. And the kids just, you could just see the relief. You could just see the ease that allyship gave them, just being in a space where they could feel safe and they could feel heard and, protected if need be. So those are two major examples that I can think of. I hope I didn't go off topic, but, those are the two ones that really kind of stick out that I've been a part of. The other thing is that I've been personally working more on art or developing or creating art that with my butterfly project, because I have a community art project called the Butterfly Project, and it's a writing collage for youth in crisis. And one thing that I'm going to do this spring, but like, you mentioned in part one, I've been doing a lot more research on how to be, me personally, how to be a better ally, educating myself more, learning more, seeing how I speak and how I respond. And it's been a journey for me because I'm non-LGBTQIA. And, I want to make sure that when I use my voice, it's done correctly and it's done accurately. And I want to express that in my paintings in some upcoming boards that I'm going to do. So I'm excited about that. Yeah.
That all sounds like awesome stuff. And you made a couple of great points, especially about educating yourself, the fact that, since you're not a part of the LGBTQ community in the traditional sense, you are a part of the allyship community, kind of not being constantly immersed and not dealing with those problems daily, the problems of being LGBTQ, meaning being asked invasive questions, possibly being a victim of a hate crime or not having reliable, or I guess I shouldn't say reliable, I guess I should say not having acceptable friends or a support system. So the fact that, you really dive in and you really care about getting things right and advocating and using your voice in the right way are amazing. And that is what all true allies should do. If you want to learn more about how to be a true ally, go to part one. I'm just going to keep plugging that, just keep doing that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like your part, it sounds like your part as a part of the SAVE acronym is really that E, that engage. And that is amazing because, something that I wanted to point out is the first part of SAVE is spreading accurate and relevant information. But I think something that gets missed, and not to downplay the importance of this step, because it's very important to be spreading the information. But if you have knowledge, and you don't apply it, then the knowledge goes to waste. You know, and especially if you're an ally, just you knowing it is not doing anything for the community. You should be spreading and advocating, just like, you know, you were saying. And kind of to quote the blog, knowledge is power, but power is pointless if not put to good use. So definitely that educating yourself and then spreading that information to the public, but also engaging with that information in a public setting and really getting your voice out there and using your actions more than you use your words. And I think you're a great example of an ally who is doing that and wakes up every day and chooses to do that. And we need more people like you. Like, you're a real one. Absolutely.
Thanks. I appreciate that, you know, because it's this simple to me. I mean, like I said before, I'm not a paid spokesperson for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I'm not a paid employee or spokesperson for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. To be transparent, I've lost a lot of people I truly loved to suicide, okay? And a few that I know that I will share, they were, you know, I had two friends who were lesbian, and I had one friend who he was transgender. And so honestly, ever since I was a teenager, I live in New York City. So in New York City, it's like, are you serious? You know, we're here, okay?
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
Broadway is like in New York City.
Like, we're here. Like, they don't even try to act like you don't see us, because like, New York City is one of the cornerstones of, you know, advocacy for the LGBTQ community. Like, hello, you know, since
Yeah.
the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. So, you know, who can forget Stonewall, you know, and some very, very famous places that spearheaded over and over again the push to be heard and seen. And when I was a teenager, I used to go to a youth program called The Door, the Center for Alternatives. And that was my first encounter with a community, because this was also when HIV/AIDS was very high. And even in the community of the youth, you know, that was the first time I've ever encountered anyone in the LGBTQ community. And I was totally naive. I didn't know what was going on, but I figured it out. And even as I figured it out, you know, it didn't matter to me. I was just like, okay, you know, and so maybe I had allyship in my head, you know, just instinctively, that I was like, oh, okay, you know, I didn't judge. I didn't think much of it. You know, I didn't question it, you know, but in the same sense, I didn't know how to ask questions, you know, and it was different then. When I say then, we're talking about in the 80s and 90s, so it's like, I'm telling you my age, yes I am, and I don't care. And you know,
Hear you, girl.
It wasn't thank you. It wasn't a concern about pronouns and things like that. It was just, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I love, this is who I love, that's it. And that was the conversation. And either you were with me or you weren't, you know? And The Door was a safe space for teenagers that were going through that, because in the 80s, it was very, very aggressive. It was very, there was a lot of hate crimes going on. And, you know, I never agreed with that. I never thought that was cool or okay. A human being is a human being at the end of the day. And so you wanting to hurt someone because you don't agree with what they're doing, you know, just for that purpose, or who they are, or what they want, who they want to love, or who they love. No, I'm not cool with that. And so, humanity, I advocate for humanity, because we all humans in this space we call Earth. And I don't want to get too preachy, so let me pull back to what I was originally talking about in point, which was when I was talking about NAMI, and then I got off this little subject. So when I was talking about my experiences, I think I had started talking about with the door, but then before that I was talking about, what was I talking
You
about?
had
What was my point?
you had mentioned your experience with suicide in your life.
Yes. See, I get distracted. That's what my thoughts.
That's what I am here for.
So, yeah, and that was a big part of it because there wasn't any supports, and one ally is not enough. I knew, and I accepted, and I was like understanding of everything that was going on, but they needed more. They needed so much more. My lost ones, they needed more support from others, not just me. Sometimes one person isn't enough, and at the time it wasn't, and the pain was just too much, and it just broke my heart. And so when I go out there, when I advocate with AFSP, when I advocate with NAMI, when I advocate through my art, through my work in the community with the children or what have you, I'm always thinking about them. I'm always thinking, am I representing a safe voice? Am I representing a safe space? Am I helping to ease the struggle a little more, a little better? When you're sitting with me and you're venting, am I using my space with you, your space with me, to create a space for us to heal? And you look at me and say, okay, she gets me, and I'm going to be okay. I always hope and wonder if I am. And so that's why I'm constantly trying to learn and educate to make sure, because it is changing, it is ever changing, and so I'm trying to keep up. I'm not gonna lie. I'm trying to keep I have to be transparent. It's like, oh, okay, okay, got it.
Yep, it's the continued learning process is what's
Yeah,
important.
a bit. and I'm honest about that. And I'm honest about that. And it's like, I say, okay, if I literally ask for forgiveness right off the back. Like, if I'm saying something that's not accurate, please correct me. And the reception, 98, well, okay, 95. 95% of the time is like, okay, listen, this is what this means. Da-da-da. And I'm like, all right, whew, it's a beautiful exchange. It's a beautiful exchange of education. It's a beautiful exchange of knowledge. It's a beautiful exchange of compassion towards each other, empathy, and connection. And I think that's just great to
Yeah,
part of that.
I agree. And I think something that came up a lot in what we've been discussing is how much things have changed, and why, obviously that kind of shows why it's important to keep learning and to continue being educated. But we wouldn't have the opportunity, I guess, the privilege to have all of this knowledge if it wasn't for that change that we have seen since, the 50s and the 60s, everything that happened, especially with Stonewall. I did a whole blog on kind of the history of the LGBTQ community in America, and New York was a big part of that. And all of that change came around through either just a general change in societal norms, and that's changing day by day, but it also came through changes like, policy and government and laws and elections. And a big part of that is, having, like you said, more than just one ally, having a lot of allies who can join the LGBTQ community in voting for things that will better our living circumstances and, in effect, better our mental health and not voting for things that don't. Something that I mentioned in part one was the Don't Say Gay bill that's going on in Florida right now. And I didn't really go into much detail about it in part one, because I'm going to do a whole kind of episode on how the laws impact LGBTQ mental health, but I'll briefly review this. And it essentially is just going to be removing the conversation of sexuality and gender from schools in Florida for primary schools in Florida, because it is considered not appropriate, but yet it's appropriate to talk about, being straight, or, it's appropriate to call someone who identifies as a female by she, her pronouns, but not like if they are biologically female and identify as male, it's not okay to use he, him. That wouldn't be allowed. And that could effectively erase the history of LGBTQ being taught in schools. So this all kind of just wraps around and shows the interconnectivity of everything, which is why I decided to, when I was creating the SAVE acronym, I kind of played around with it, different things. I'm like, what does V stand for? that really is like important. I was like, voting, like voting is very important in keeping, not just gaining our rights and gaining stability, but maintaining that stability. We see a lot of times laws being stripped away because people don't pay attention, because people aren't educated enough to be paying attention. And it all kind of bleeds back into that voting section of just, if you have the knowledge, what's going on in your community. It's not just at a federal level, it's a local level too. Just staying involved, that's the education portion. Staying engaged is the voting portion. So really the acronym is just one thing, and that's just called being an ally and being aware of what's going on in the community. So, I would say, based off of just all of this change that's been going on and all of the things that brought us to this point in history where, I can make this podcast and not worry too much about being a victim of a hate crime because I even decided to speak out. What do you think, out of all of those, whether it be spreading information, voting, engaging, or advocacy, out of all of those, what do you think has been the most important part of allyship in the past couple of decades to institute this change?
That's a great question.
No wrong answers, of course. It's all just open discussion.
I know. In the past 20 years, wow. What hasn't the past 20 years? I can't say one is more or less than all of them. But what sticks out at first thought is advocacy, because they all are interconnected. Advocacy is speaking out, engaging, that leads to legislative areas of the voting. Advocacy, speaking to your local lobbyists, your Congress, who create the laws or discuss the laws, at least just being able to speak to someone who will speak to those who come to the round table of rights and laws and liberties, and knowing that someone's going to walk in and be your voice to be heard. Not to say that even if the bill doesn't get passed is great, but the fact that the seed is planted. The takeaway will be information and knowledge and an understanding that, yeah, there's voices out there that want to be heard. Yeah, there are people who want to be represented. Yeah, there are humans who want to be recognized in the law. That's, fair and, you know, reasonable. And that's it. And so you may not agree with it, but I'm here standing wherever, in the Senate or in the Congress or in the local community, as that representative to say, this is what they want, blah, 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 blah. And the conversation can just keep happening and happening and happening until something changes, or until the community itself makes the change. Because other allies will step up and go, hey, well, this is not happening here, but we could do this way, you know, which is also another form of advocacy, brainstorming, coming together with comprehensive plans. Because there's a saying that I've heard and I sometimes use, if they don't want to make a seat, if they don't want to give you a seat at the table, then you have to create your own table. You know?
That is so good.
Right? It's like, you know, something about if you don't have like, yeah, if you don't have a seat at the table, if they don't want you to have the seat at the table, then you create your own table. And that's what a lot of communities, some of them will end up eventually doing. It's like, oh, okay, fine, we'll just make our own table. And once we make this table, don't interfere, because we wanted a seat at the table and you didn't want us to sit there. So, okay, you know, advocacy can be self-sufficiency. Getting together, if you have like, this happens in communities of color, this happens in religious sections or what have you. If you don't have those supports that you're reaching out, your allies can come together and yourselves and create it for yourself. Create it. Just build it. Build your own community. Build your own. You know, those who have, like, if you need services or things done, and someone or several or many have them, the next thing you know, you just build your own community and become self-sufficient on each other and work together with each other. It's not impossible to do. It's just a matter of, you know, having that connection within, even within the community, to be able to see things on the same page, to say, okay, remember, this is our objective, this is our goal. Let's all stay at least on the same page so that we can get what we need accomplished. So, yeah, I would say advocacy and voting. I mean, all of them, but those were the two that kind of just drew out for more forefront than anything off my head.
I see. How about, would you, you know, outside of kind of the roles and responsibilities that we discussed today, what would you add to the roles and responsibility of an ally, specifically in terms of helping mental health equality? So, for example, for me, I always feel, you know, as someone who is in the LGBTQ community, I am pansexual, and someone who has been, you know, kind of knee deep for the past couple of years in mental health care and mental health service, either as a patient or working on the opposite end of the spectrum as a mentor. So for me, I would have added something along the lines of not necessarily the same thing as engagement, more of initiative, having the personal initiative to make a step forward. Like, you know, you can't spread information or be an advocate or engage or vote if you don't have the initiative to do so. And I say, if you want to call yourself an ally, then you have to have that initiative. And for me, having initiative, you know, I can't say I'm an ally because I am in the community. So it's not really my place to talk on the allyship part of that. But being in the LGBTQ community, my initiative for my mental health treatment has been to make it known to my providers, like, this is my sexuality, this is how I identify, you will call me by these pronouns, like setting that initiative for yourself, which kind of then leads it to advocacy after the fact. That's what I would add. But what about you? What would you add?
Oh, I have an example. Something similar, like, okay, I'll give you an example that was that was actually recent. When I held a project, when I had a workshop for the second section of boards that I did for my art projects, I was working with a nonprofit organization of youth leadership with youth that were doing community, I think with 100 hours, I forget how many hours of community service as part of their high school credit within the community, doing things that helped enhance their leadership skills. And the first thing that we did once everybody was settled in, we started talking about, okay, state your name, state your pronouns that you prefer to be referred to, you know, and some of them were looking around like, did she just say state your, like, as if they were kind of surprised we even asked, you know, and you know, one person actually raised their hand and was like, excuse me, why did you ask what our pronouns are? And we were like, because we believe in equality in all forms and fashions. We want everyone to be represented respectfully and appropriately, you know? And so if you want to be addressed as he, she, her, they, or what have you, we're here to acknowledge and recognize that so that we make sure that you know that you are properly represented. And it was like smiles were showing up, and because part of their introduction was state their name, their grade, their pronoun, and you know, why they were part of the organization that they were in. So just that, it doesn't seem like a lot. It's like, okay, big deal. Like, it depends on who you're saying it's big deal to, because it was a big deal to them, you know, just to have that opportunity to identify without judgment, you know, was a good thing. So I think as a non LGBTQ, I don't know if it's called cis hetero or just hetero, I'll just say hetero. I feel like when, you know, asking what your pronoun is, just asking, like asking more, asking what you prefer, what would you like, you know, and hopefully receiving a positive response. Because sometimes the response isn't positive, like, well, what do you mean? You know, because sometimes, and I have to say this, you know, where I've personally come across where I've actually said that, and it was almost as if it was offensive that I even asked, and it was like, I'm just trying to show respect, and it was like, well, that's not necessary. You don't have to do that. Da 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 da. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, but at the same time, this is what I'm learning. So sometimes it's not always received well, but it's just the principle. So the principle of being aware, the principle of asking the questions with respect. And you could say with respect, may I ask if what your pronouns you prefer to be? You know, may I ask which bathroom would you like to use? You know, may I ask, you know, just ask. And in that kindness, and that reciprocity hopefully will come to educate what the need is or the want is. What could be done more? Oh, what also could be done more is holding others accountable in your space. For example, if someone is sitting next to you and they're non-LGBTQ and they're making fun and mocking and insulting or imitating someone, instead of, you know, later on speaking to the person and saying, oh, I'm so sorry for my friends, you know, that wasn't nice, da, da, da. No, call them on their crap right then and there, you know?
Yeah.
like, you know, oh, so it's just like, okay, I'm not cool with that you're doing that right now. You know, it can be confrontational, or, you know, I feel like if we even have to, develop a language to address that. Because it doesn't always have to be aggressive. Sometimes it can be more diplomatic, because sometimes, you know, everybody's personality is different, and some may have a personality that's not aggressive or not assertive, and they may want to say something, but they don't know what to say, but they still want to say something. Maybe you're developing a language what am I trying to say? Of advocating and speaking up by addressing the presence of discrimination or disrespect right in front of you, right then and there, by saying to those persons, that's not cool to say that or do that. If that's what you believe, I'm not okay with it. You know, if that's what you're going to say about, you know, whatever the situation is, I'm letting you know that I don't think that's cool. I'm not going, and I'm not, you know, it could be right in the presence of the person. It could be after they leave. Just say, hey, what was that about? That wasn't cool. You know, if you do that again, I may not associate with you. You know, sometimes severing certain bonds, if it's like, you know, you don't have to agree with it, but you could just still a human being and respect it, you know, or whatever the situation may be. But I feel like having a real talk or real convo with those who are in your space, disrespecting, insulting, or doing all those hideous things, right in your space, on how to speak up right then and there, in a language and in a manner that says what you need to say, and at the same time gives them something to think about, to stop doing that, to just stop, you know, perpetuating that kind of negativity. I know a lot of non-LGBTQ who don't speak up. They'll just sit there. They're too afraid to say anything because it's a boss. And maybe their boss saying something. You know, it's tricky. You know, it may be their boss saying something and they just got the job and they're like, oh my God, you know? Oh wow, this is what I'm dealing with. Wonderful. This is what we're gonna do every coffee break, every meeting. I can't stomach this. What do I do? You know?
Just go straight home. All right, let me get back on Indeed right there. Let me just see what we got going.
like you're on your phone, like, okay, Glassdoor.
Not the Glassdoor.
Oh my God, what did I get hired into? Ooh.
That is so
you
true.
Know?
And yeah,
you know what I
and,
mean? Like that.
oh
like it could be a job. It could be, you know, it could be your and you really, really needed this. I mean, this was like the dream job. Everything. You bust your blankety blank for, and now bam, you're hitting this wall like, oh God. You know,
yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, the whole situation can be very tricky, and we kind of, you know, since the whole situation it can be not very straightforward, like you're hanging out with a group of friends and they say something derogatory and you correct them. Like, it's always like that. Like, there are power dynamics, there are things you have to worry about, like, is this a safe environment? Am I, you know, not at risk here? And that's actually something that, it's really funny that this came up, because it's something that we talked about extensively in part one, was kind of like how to deal with false allies, or how to deal with people who are homophobic and transphobic, especially if you're non-confrontational, and how to approach that in a way that is safe for your mental health and your physical health. So I think, you know, because this keeps coming up, I'm curious if this would be a good topic to discuss, kind of all on its own, of the situation of, you know, how do you address these issues but also remain in a good place? So I think that definitely deserves some more research on my part, and so I'm giving myself homework there, and maybe we can look forward to that next week or the week after, depending on my schedule. I'm a busy woman. No, I'm literally not. I'm literally taking a nap after this.
The time you took to carve out so diligently for me is like, oh my God, I'm so honored. But yeah, you're onto something, because it is a conversation that is hard. You know, you do feel threatened. You do feel, you just made such a hard nail point that how can you um, assert yourself in your allyship with minimal to no consequence mentally and physically, because cyberbullying is no joke. You know, physical assaults, isolation, retribution, retaliation, um, is damaging on both sides of this of the aisle. You know, for the LGBTQ community and the non-LGBTQ community, that's allying. It's like, oh, what? You know, so I would love to see that. I'd love to jump on that. You know,
We may have a feature of a reoccurring cast member here. I think something we can look forward to. Oh
I'll be
my.
here. Hey, just look me up. Look me up. I'll
Well,
definitely jump into that.
well, speaking of kind of, getting connected, as we kind of wrap up today's episode, why don't you kind of drop some plugs? You are our cast member, and this is the space to do that. So why don't you drop where people can find out more about you?
You can find out more about me on Instagram predominantly right now. I'm hoping to expand more plugs, but I do have Twitter at Distractible Me, where I post a lot of my quotes, mostly and occasionally some of my artwork that I do. So that would be spelled EISTRACTABL with 2 E's for Twitter. And then for Instagram, it's just 1 E at Distractible Me. So just put Distractible and then me all together, Distractible Me. And you will find me on Instagram. Yeah.
That is awesome. I'm loving the double E on the Twitter. So don't forget that, guys. It's 2 E's on the Twitter. And oh my gosh,
Somebody else already has the 1 E. So darn it.
I feel you. When I was making the Instagram handle, which I'll go ahead and plug right now for the blog, the Instagram handle, if you want to keep up with everything that's been going on and everything that will continue to go on with the blog and the podcast, you can find us on Instagram at the.calm.blog, all lowercase. And yes, it's separated by dots because somebody already took the blog, the blog, blog. Like I was TCB was already taken. Like I can't win, guys. And if you want to follow, us on Twitter, you can just go at the blog, and everything is lowercase except for calm. That's all uppercase because we're yelling apparently today. So, and if you want to join the casting crew of the podcast, or if you want to come on as a guest writer, share your personal stories or your expertise, go to www.theCALMblog.com and just fill out the simple form on the join page. There is no experience necessary, and it's completely open to all allies and members of the LGBTQ community, regardless of where you are in the world or age. So come on. And that is all we have today. And thank you so much for joining me on this Sunday afternoon.
Yes, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for asking the tough questions. I love that mental challenge. And I appreciate your work and I appreciate everything that you're doing, and just keep going.
Yes, and to everyone out there, keep going as well. Goodbye, everyone. Bye.